Hello everyone, where are you watching us from right now? Which country and which city? Please make sure to write it in the comments so we can see where everyone is listening from together. The elderly professor you see on the screen is not just a narrator. He is the voice of millions of years of perseverance and the will to survive. If you respect that determination, don't forget to leave a like for him and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. In the depths of time, long before the dawn of humanity, a silhouette emerges. Neither exactly like us nor completely alien. This is the story of the most resilient human species this world has ever seen. They built no empires, nor did they invent writing, but they walked upon this planet for nearly 10 times the duration of our own species' existence. Silently, stubbornly, and with unwavering will. This is the forgotten epic of Homo Erectus, who existed on Earth for approximately 2 million years. Above all, there was a step, but this was not just any step. This was a step taken away from the safe arms of the trees into the seemingly endless sea of grass. In the heart of Africa, millions of years ago, the world was changing. Forests were receding, giving way to vast open savannas. This new world brought new rules. Moving on 4 legs or clinging to branches was no longer an advantage. It was a burden. Danger could lurk in ambush among the tall grasses at any moment, and food sources were scattered kilometers apart. It was in this harsh scene that evolution's slow and patient hand was shaping a new being. Built upon the legacy of earlier ancestors like Homo habilis, Homo erectus was born to be the master of this new world. Its greatest revolution was in its body. This upright being, capable of standing fully on 2 legs, could see the horizon in a way no hominin had ever seen before. This upright posture didn't just mean seeing farther, it also freed the hands. Now these hands were free not just for climbing or maintaining balance, but for carrying, working, and creating. It had a body designed to cover long distances under the savanna's scorching sun. Its long legs, narrow hips, and foot structure quite similar to modern humans had transformed it into a marvel of energy efficiency. It could run, walk, and most importantly, track its prey until it tired. This was the first step of a strategy known as persistence hunting. Homo erectus would win not with brute strength, but with endurance. Its brain was also larger than its ancestors. This heralded more complex thinking, planning, and social interaction capabilities. However, this large brain meant a large energy cost. To meet this cost, it needed higher quality nutrients, especially meat and fat. This need would inevitably push it toward tool-making and more sophisticated hunting or scavenging strategies. The savanna's new walker was initiating a new era, not just physically, but mentally as well. It was no longer a passive victim of its environment. It was an actor beginning to understand its environment and use it to its own advantage. Its first steps were taken not just on the ground, but into the future. And these steps were only the beginning of that incredible journey that would carry it beyond Africa to the entire world. The hands were free. But what would they do? The answer lay hidden in a material found everywhere on the ground, in riverbeds. Stone. The predecessors of Homo erectus, such as Homo habilis, had used simple stone flakes and pebbles known as Acheulean tools. These consisted of striking one stone against another to obtain a sharp edge. It was functional. However, there was no design or standard. Homo erectus, on the other hand, created a revolution in this regard. The technology that would become its signature was the Acheulean hand axe. This was not just a tool, but a concept, an idea carved into stone. The hand axe was a symmetrical, bifacially worked, teardrop-shaped tool. Its construction required much more mental effort than Acheulean tools. First, the right stone had to be selected: flint, quartzite, and the like. This required understanding the properties of the material. Then it was necessary to visualize in the mind an image of the finished product. This is evidence of abstract thinking and planning ability. The person making the tool had to know where to strike the stone, at what angle, and with how much force. Each blow affected the next. A wrong strike could break the stone and waste all the effort. This was a process requiring a series of complex motor skills and foresight. The hand axe itself was like a multi-purpose Swiss Army knife. With its pointed tip, it could dig into the ground and extract edible roots. With its sharp edges, it could skin an animal's hide, butcher its meat, and break its bones to reach the nutritious marrow inside. It could also be used to cut tree branches to make weapons like spears or to build shelters. This single tool was the cornerstone of Homo erectus's survival toolkit. The most astonishing aspect of this technology was its standardization and geographical spread. From Africa to Asia to Europe, hand axes of nearly identical design are found almost everywhere Homo erectus set foot. This shows that knowledge was transmitted between generations and groups. A master taught an apprentice how to make it. This points to the existence of a kind of culture, of shared knowledge. The fact that this basic design changed very little for more than 1 million years is evidence of how successful and adaptable it was. The mind within the stone was not just creating a sharp edge. It was also demonstrating the ability to plan, teach, learn, and maintain a standard. This was the most concrete evidence that Homo erectus possessed not just a more powerful body, but also a more organized and capable mind. No species had been so identified with the land of its birth. Hominin evolution had been shaped in Africa's cradle for millions of years. However, Homo erectus would change this rule. It would become a global traveler. Approximately 1.8 million years ago, some groups of this species embarked on a journey no human had ever taken before. They left Africa. This is one of the most important turning points in human history. But what drove them on this incredible journey? There is no single answer. Rather, it was a combination of several influences. Population growth may have played a role. As their numbers increased as a successful species, competition for resources also increased. This may have pushed some groups to seek new hunting grounds and living spaces. Climate changes are another important factor. Periodic droughts or ecological shifts may have forced the prey animals they were accustomed to migrate. Homo erectus may have also drifted toward new continents unknowingly by following these animal herds. However, the most fundamental thing that made this migration possible was Homo erectus's own capabilities. Their advanced tools gave them the ability to hunt animals and process plants they had never encountered before. Their larger brains provided the capacity to understand new environments, anticipate dangers, and produce solutions. And most importantly, their bodies designed for endurance made it possible for them to cover long distances on foot. These first travelers probably didn't plan to cover thousands of kilometers within one generation. This was a slow expansion, lasting over generations. A group would settle in a valley. When their population increased, their children would move to the next valley. When this process was repeated over thousands of years, the resulting picture was humanity's spread across the planet. Evidence of this journey was found in Dmanisi, Georgia. The fossils discovered here, approximately 1.8 million years old, are the oldest human remains outside Africa, and showed that these first migrants may have had more primitive features than we thought. Perhaps large brains and advanced tools were not a cause but a consequence of this migration. The journey may have forced them to become more intelligent and skilled. After Dmanisi, their traces extend to Asia. Famous fossils like Java man in Indonesia and Peking man in China show how successfully Homo erectus spread to and adapted to this new continent. This was not just a geographical spread, but also a mental expansion. In each new environment, Homo erectus had to cope with new plants, new animals, and new climate conditions. This constantly tested and developed their problem-solving abilities. The first steps outside Africa changed humanity's destiny forever. They initiated the journey that transformed us from a local African species into a global presence. Darkness was always the greatest fear. Night was the time of hunters. Cold penetrated to the bones. Raw meat was tough and difficult to digest. For millions of years, all living things lived by these rules. Then one day, a spark changed everything. Homo erectus may be the first species to bring fire under control. This was not a simple discovery. It was a revolution that changed the balance of life on the planet. The first use of fire probably began opportunistically, a tree burning from a lightning strike or a natural grass fire. The first humans may have taken a branch from this natural fire and carried it to their own camps. They learned to feed it, to keep it from going out. This alone was a major mental step forward. However, the real revolution came when they learned to create fire themselves, whenever and wherever they wanted. Exactly when this process began is still debated. However, evidence such as 1 million-year-old burnt bone and plant remains found in the Wonderwork Cave in South Africa shows how far back controlled fire use goes. Fire control provided Homo erectus with countless advantages. First and foremost, it meant protection. At night, a fire burning in the center of camp was a shield that kept large predators like saber-toothed cats at a distance. Now the safest places in caves belonged only to them. Second, it meant warmth. Fire enabled them to survive cold nights and the harsh climates of glacial periods. This made it possible for them to spread to colder latitudes, into the interiors of Europe and Asia. Third, and perhaps most importantly, it meant cooking. Cooking created a revolution in nutrition. Cooking meat made it softer and easier to digest. This allowed the body to obtain more calories and nutrients from food. It also reduced diseases by killing parasites and bacteria in meat. Hard plant foods like roots and tubers also became edible when cooked. This diversified food sources. More energy could feed larger brains. Many scientists believe there is a direct connection between the beginning of cooking and the increase in Homo erectus's brain size. Fire also became a social center. At night, people would gather around the fire, eat, make their tools, and perhaps tell each other about the day's events. The light of the fire extended the day, creating time and space for social bonds to strengthen. This may have encouraged cooperation and intragroup communication. As master of fire, Homo erectus not only conquered darkness and cold, it also changed its own evolutionary trajectory. Fire offered them better nutrition, more security, and a stronger social structure. This was one of the cornerstones of their incredible 2-million-year reign. The savanna was as merciless as it was generous. It was full of herbivore herds. But these herds were fast and powerful. For a single hunter, subduing a giant bison or an elephant was impossible. The key to Homo erectus's survival lay not in singular strength, but in collective action. They were among the first human species to turn hunting into a team game. Cooperative hunting didn't just mean obtaining more meat, it also required complex social dynamics and communication skills. These hunts began with careful planning. The group would study the terrain and the direction of the wind. They needed to reach some kind of agreement on who would startle the herd, who would lie in ambush, who would drive the animal toward a narrow passage or a cliff. This implies communication made through gestures, sounds, and shared understanding, even if there was no verbal language. Homo erectus was not just a powerful, but also an intelligent hunter. They didn't just use brute force. Piles of animal bones found at archaeological sites show that they generally targeted young, old, or sick animals. This is a smart strategy, showing the ability to identify and focus on the weakest link in the herd. This both increased the likelihood of a successful hunt and reduced risk for the hunters. The weapons they used were simple. They probably used wooden spears with sharpened tips, stones, and hand axes. These weapons were effective not for killing from a distance, but for attacking up close. This shows how dangerous the hunt was and how vital cooperation was. A group of hunters would surround a giant animal with spears, wound it, and track it until it collapsed from blood loss or exhaustion. Persistence hunting came into play here as well. Homo erectus's long-distance running ability enabled them to chase animals for hours until they tired from overheating. Once the prey was successfully subdued, cooperation continued. Dismembering a massive animal and carrying its meat to camp required organized effort. Using sharp stone tools, meat was separated from bone and shared among group members. This sharing was a fundamental mechanism that strengthened social bonds and ensured the survival of every group member. A successful hunt didn't just fill stomachs. It also reinforced the group's status hierarchy, bonds, and mutual obligations. Cooperative hunting elevated Homo erectus to higher levels of the food chain. It transformed them from mere scavengers into feared hunters. The planning, communication, and social coordination skills developed in this process were the cornerstones that would shape the future course of human evolution. What makes a being what it is? For Homo erectus, this statement is a reality that determined its evolutionary destiny. Compared to its ancestors, the radical change in their diet reshaped both their bodies and minds. This change was a clear shift toward consuming more meat and fat. Earlier, hominins lived largely on a plant-based diet. Fruits, leaves, nuts, and occasionally small animals they could catch. Their digestive systems were long to process these fibrous and low-calorie foods. In the fossil record of Homo erectus, however, a smaller jaw, smaller teeth, and a narrower rib cage are seen. This points to a shorter digestive system. A massive intestine was no longer needed to ferment fibrous plants. This anatomical change is strong evidence that the diet had changed. When less energy was spent on digestion, this energy could be directed elsewhere, to the brain. The brain is a metabolically very expensive organ. Although it constitutes only a small portion of body weight, it consumes approximately 1/5 of the body's energy while at rest. Homo erectus's brain was significantly larger than that of Homo habilis, and this growth could only be sustained with a high-quality, energy-dense diet. Meat and bone marrow perfectly met this need. These nutrients were rich in protein and fatty acids critical for brain development. With the control of fire, the introduction of cooking took this nutritional revolution even further. Cooking increased the nutritional value of foods and facilitated digestion. This meant obtaining more energy from the same amount of food. This energy surplus became the fuel that supported brain growth. This was a kind of positive feedback loop. A larger brain made it possible to make more complex tools, develop better hunting strategies, and control fire. These behaviors provided access to more meat. More meat, in turn, further supported brain growth. This cycle placed Homo erectus in a cognitively far superior position to its ancestors. This changing diet affected not only their biology, but also their behavior. Hunting and scavenging required roaming across vast territories, understanding animal behavior, and cooperating. This promoted cognitive abilities such as geographical knowledge, planning, and social intelligence. Homo erectus's success was closely linked not only to its upright walking or tool-making, but also to fundamentally changing its mode of nutrition. By discovering how to exploit one of the richest energy sources the planet offered, they ignited the engine of their own evolution. The world of Homo erectus was not a world of great cities or crowded villages. Their life revolved around small, intimate, and tightly interconnected groups. These hunter-gatherer groups were probably units of 20 to 30 people consisting of several families. This small scale was both their greatest strength and the cornerstone of their survival strategy. Group living first and foremost meant security. In the wild, a single individual was extremely vulnerable. However, a group could keep watch against predators, form a common defense line, and care for sick or injured members. A group gathered around the fire at night was a refuge not only physically, but psychologically as well. Cooperation permeated every area of daily life. While men generally went farther to hunt, women probably gathered plant foods closer to camp and looked after children. However, this division of labor may not have been rigid. Everyone's contribution was vital to the group's overall well-being. Meat obtained from a successful hunt or gathered nuts were shared within the group. This sharing was not just a distribution of food, it was also a social glue. The principle of reciprocity, if you help me today, I'll help you tomorrow. This understanding reinforced intra-group harmony and trust. Within these small groups, face-to-face interaction was essential. Everyone knew everyone. Understanding someone's mood, intentions, or reliability was a critical skill for survival. This situation may have promoted the evolution of characteristics such as empathy, social intelligence, and the ability to read others' minds. Communication was at the center of this social fabric. Whether Homo erectus spoke language in the modern sense is unknown. The structure of the vocal cords was probably not suited to producing sounds as complex as ours. However, this doesn't mean they didn't communicate. They probably used a complex proto-language consisting of gestures, facial expressions, body language, and various sounds. They could tell each other the location of prey, that danger was approaching, or how to make a tool through these means. Knowledge transmission, especially between generations, was made possible thanks to this social structure. Young people learned by watching their elders, tool making, hunting, which plants were edible, and which animals they should avoid. This was an unwritten culture transmitted through experience. These small mobile groups also facilitated Homo erectus's spread across the planet. When a group reached a certain size or resources diminished, it could split, with some migrating to a new region. This flexible social structure enabled them to rapidly adapt to different environments and spread across wide geographies. Homo erectus was not a solitary hero. Its success was the success of a community small, but knotted together with strong bonds. One of the most striking features of Homo erectus's approximately 2 million year reign was its incredible adaptability. This species managed to survive in a wide variety of ecosystems, from Africa's hot savannas to Asia's humid forests and even Europe's cold steppes. This is evidence of how flexible they were both biologically and behaviorally. Biological adaptation began in their bodies. Body proportions quite similar to modern humans, especially their long legs, provided efficient heat dissipation. This was a critical feature that prevented overheating while covering long distances in pursuit of prey in hot climates. Reduced body hair was also part of this thermoregulation system. However, when they migrated to colder climates, these features could turn into a disadvantage. Here, behavioral adaptations came into play. Fire control was the most important way to cope with the cold. Caves and rock shelters offered natural shelters for protection from wind and cold. They also likely learned to use animal skins as simple clothing or coverings. This is a behavior difficult to prove directly in the fossil record because skins decompose over time. However, given the wear marks on their tools and the climates they lived in, this is an extremely logical inference. Their flexibility in nutrition was also key to their adaptation. Different environments had different food sources available. While hunting large herbivores in Africa, they may have benefited from seafood in Asia's coastal regions. In forested areas, they may have turned to different plant and animal species. Multi-purpose tools like the Acheulean hand axe gave them the capacity to process almost any kind of food they encountered. This shows that, unlike many other species specialized in diet, Homo erectus followed a generalist feeding strategy. This generalism increased their chances of survival by enabling them to turn to another food source when one diminished or disappeared. Their mental flexibility was equally important. Each new environment meant new challenges, new predators, new poisonous plants, new ways to find water sources. Homo erectus had to learn this information, remember it, and transmit it between generations. This ensured the continuous development of their problem-solving and planning abilities. Some physical differences are seen among Homo erectus fossils from different regions. For example, the skulls of fossils in Asia are generally thicker and more robust than those in Africa. This may point to a microevolutionary process showing that the species adapted to local conditions over time in different geographical regions. Homo erectus was not a species that could fit into a single mold. It was a biological and cultural chameleon constantly reshaping itself according to the conditions of the changing world. This incredible adaptive capacity. It is one of the key factors explaining why they remained the planet's master for so long. The world of Homo erectus was a much wilder and more dangerous place than today's. They shared the landscape with giant animals known as Pleistocene megafauna, saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, cave bears, mammoths, and giant aurochs. These creatures were both a threat and a potential food source. Homo erectus's survival in this world full of giants was a combination of intelligence, cooperation, and courage. The greatest threat was undoubtedly the large predators. Saber-toothed cats like Smilodon or giant short-faced bears were an irresistible force for a single Homo erectus. Therefore, living in groups and being constantly alert was vitally important. Even during the day, an individual separated from the group could be an easy target. At night, fire was their greatest protector. The circle around the campfire formed a barrier against the dangers lurking in the darkness. Choosing defensible locations such as cave entrances or steep cliffs as main camps was also part of the strategy to protect against these predators. Homo erectus was not just a victim. It was also in competition with these predators. Especially as their hunting abilities developed, they began competing for the same prey sources. Sometimes they may have stolen a predator's kill by scaring and chasing it away. This was a risky but profitable strategy known as aggressive scavenging. Imagining a group of Homo erectus driving a saber-toothed cat away from its prey with spears and stones shows how organized and bold they could be. On the other hand, these giant animals were also tremendous food sources. Hunting a mammoth or an elephant was extremely dangerous and difficult. However, if successful, it would provide enough meat, fat, and bone marrow to last the entire group for weeks. Although evidence of such megafauna hunts is controversial, Homo erectus tools found alongside mammoth bones at some archaeological sites suggest that they at least benefited from the carcasses of these animals. They probably mostly hunted more manageable-sized animals like bison, horses, or deer. However, even these animals were much larger and more dangerous than their modern counterparts. Living in this dangerous world also shaped Homo erectus's mental abilities. Understanding animal behavior, reading their tracks, predicting which animal would be where and when, all of these required complex cognitive skills. The ability to anticipate danger and assess risk was essential for survival. Homo erectus managed to exist for approximately 2 million years in a world full of giants. This shows that they were an intelligent and adaptive species that learned not only to be part of the ecosystem, but also how to manipulate it to their advantage. They carved their own path by witnessing and coping with both the terrible power and generosity of nature. Homo erectus left behind neither written texts nor monumental structures. However, it still had a culture. Culture, in its simplest definition, is the totality of learned behaviors passed down from generation to generation. The evidence of their culture is the Acheulean hand axe, carved into stone and remaining virtually unchanged for approximately 1.5 million years. This incredible consistency shows how successfully knowledge was transmitted from one mind to another, from one generation to the next. This knowledge transmission was most likely a silent, observation-based process. There was no modern school or apprenticeship system. A young Homo erectus would learn tool-making by carefully watching the group's more experienced members, perhaps parents or relatives. It would follow the process step by step. It would observe how the master selected the right stone, prepared the core, and extracted flakes at what angle. Then it would begin trying on its own. Its first attempts would probably be crude and unsuccessful. However, through imitation and repetition, over time it would develop the necessary motor skills and mental template. This was a process that included not just learning how to do it, but also understanding why it was done. It was necessary to grasp why this stone was better than another, why this blow was important for maintaining symmetry. This was a kind of hands-on physics and materials science. The master might guide the apprentice with gestures or simple vocalizations. When a wrong move was made, they would warn or approve a correct strike. This interaction is the foundation of social learning and has played a critical role in the development of human culture. Knowledge transmission was not limited to tool-making. Hunting techniques were also transmitted in the same way. Young people would go on hunts with experienced hunters and watch them. They would learn how to read animal tracks, how to use the wind, and how to corner prey. Knowledge of which plants were edible and which were poisonous was also vital information accumulated and transmitted over generations. A child watching its mother gathering a particular root and later imitating her was the most basic way of transmitting this knowledge. The skill of controlling and maintaining fire was also taught in the same way. This silent transmission ensured the continuity of Homo erectus's success. Each generation didn't have to start from scratch. They inherited their ancestors' accumulated wisdom and started life one step ahead. This cultural heritage was the invisible scaffolding that enabled them to spread to new environments and overcome the challenges they faced. In the world of Homo erectus, knowledge was written not with words, but with actions, and these actions were the most enduring lessons of their survival art. If we could look through a window into the mental world of Homo erectus, what would we see? What were their thoughts, feelings, dreams like? We can never know this fully. However, the traces they left behind show that their minds were much more complex and forward-looking than their ancestors. They were not creatures acting on momentary impulses. They had a mind that planned, thought about the future. One of the strongest pieces of evidence for this is their tool-making processes. Making an Acheulean hand axe is not a momentary action. It requires foreseeing a future need, for example, butchering an animal. The maker first must find suitable raw material. This could mean making a special trip to a riverbed or rock outcrop where good quality flint is found. This is goal-directed behavior and shows the ability to plan in time and space. After finding the raw material, it needs to be carried back to camp. This again is a preparation for future use. The tool-making process requires holding an image of the finished product in the mind and sequentially applying a series of steps to reach this goal. This is a capability known as working memory and forms the foundation of modern human cognition. Hunting strategies are another indicator of planning ability. A cooperative hunt requires some kind of coordination among members and a shared understanding of the goal. Knowing the seasonal migration routes of animals and waiting for the most suitable time and place to ambush reflects the capacity to predict the future and act accordingly. Base camp use also points to a similar mental structure. Having a place to return to at the end of the day requires a mental map and a sense of future time. I'm leaving here now, but I'll come back later. This simple thought is a form of mental time travel. Homo erectus's mind was probably not filled with symbolic or abstract thoughts like ours. There is no evidence yet of art, religion, or complex language. Their thoughts were more practical, concrete, and survival-focused. They might have been occupied with questions like, how can I make this stone sharper? Where will that deer herd go tomorrow? How do we protect ourselves from the approaching storm? However, this practical intelligence should not be underestimated. It was an intelligence that enabled them to understand their environment, predict it, and manipulate it to their own advantage. This planning mind transformed Homo erectus from a passive being into an active agent beginning to shape its own destiny. The ability to think about the future was one of their most powerful tools that enabled them not only to overcome the challenges of the moment, but also to sustain their existence in a changing world for approximately 2 million years. Homo erectus was not a single monolithic entity. This species, which sustained its existence for approximately 2 million years, and across a wide geography stretching from Africa to Asia, developed regional differences over time. This is not surprising. Different selection pressures in different environments lead populations to gradually acquire their own unique characters. These regional faces show the richness and complexity of Homo erectus's adaptation story. The oldest Homo erectus fossils are found in East Africa and are sometimes classified as a separate species called Homo ergaster. These early African forms had a more gracile skull and less pronounced brow ridges compared to their later Asian cousins. They represented the species' basic plan, the long-legged, large-brained, tool-using, upright-walking human model. The groups that first left Africa appear before us in Dmanisi, Georgia. The fossils here, with their quite small brains and primitive tools, surprise the scientific world. This suggests that the exodus from Africa may not have been a single major event, but that different groups with more primitive features may have embarked on this journey at different times. In Asia, the most well-known and classic forms of Homo erectus are found. Java man from Indonesia, found in the Trinil region, and Peking man from China, found in the Zhoukoudian cave, are typical examples of these Asian populations. These fossils generally had thicker skull bones, a prominent sagittal keel, a bony protrusion running down the top of the head, and quite large protruding brow ridges. Why these features developed is not entirely clear. Perhaps it was related to chewing harder foods or adaptation to different climate conditions. These Asian populations sustained their existence in their own regions for hundreds of thousands of years and were quite successful. For example, the Zhoukoudian cave was used by Homo erectus groups for generations, leaving behind a rich accumulation of tools and animal bones. In Europe, the presence of Homo erectus is more uncertain and fragmentary. Some fossils found in Spain and Italy are attributed to this species or a close relative, sometimes called Homo antecessor. These early European humans may be the ancestors of the Neanderthals, who would later evolve on this continent. These regional differences feed an ongoing debate about whether Homo erectus was a single species or a complex of closely related species. However they are classified, these different faces tell the same basic story. The story of an intelligent, resilient, and incredibly adaptive human species successfully conquering different ecological niches around the world. They were humanity's first great experiment in becoming a global species. When we think of human history, typically the Egyptian pyramids, the Roman Empire, or the Industrial Revolution come to mind. These are the achievements of our species, Homo sapiens. However, when we expand the timescale, these achievements remain like momentary flashes in the face of Homo erectus's success. Homo erectus sustained its existence on Earth for approximately 1.9 million years. This is almost 2 million years. Our own species, Homo sapiens, is thought to have existed for approximately 300,000 years. This means that Homo erectus survived for more than 6 times longer than we have existed so far. This incredible longevity is the most fundamental measure of their success. So what was the secret of this success? The answer lies in the delicate balance between change and constancy. On one hand, Homo erectus was an extremely innovative species. It perfected upright posture, it revolutionized tool technology, it controlled fire and spread across the planet by leaving Africa. These innovations gave them an advantage no hominin had ever had. On the other hand, once they found a successful formula, they remained faithful to it. The most striking example of this is the Acheulean hand axe. The basic design of this tool remained virtually unchanged for more than 1 million years. From a modern perspective, this may look like stagnation. In our world, technology becomes obsolete every few years. However, from an evolutionary perspective, this is not stagnation but a sign of perfection. The hand axe was such an effective and versatile solution that there was no reason to change it. The principle of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, formed the foundation of their survival strategy. This long-term stability shows that they had reached a kind of equilibrium with their environment. They had found their own ecological niche and learned to live sustainably within it. Their population never exploded enough to challenge the planet's carrying capacity. Their technology was not powerful enough to irreparably destroy their environment. They lived as part of nature, in harmony with its rhythms. This also says something about Homo erectus's mental structure. Perhaps that constant search for innovation, that impulse that there must be a better way that characterizes our species, was less developed in them. Their minds may have been more focused on preserving and transmitting proven and working solutions. This was not a weakness, but a different success strategy. 2 million years is a geological time period for a species. During this time, mountains rose, rivers changed course, glaciers came and went. Homo erectus witnessed all these changes and survived. Their story is not one of rapid and dazzling progress, but of slow, patient, and unwavering resilience. This success beyond time is the greatest evidence of how resilient the human lineage can be. The fossil records tell us not only how Homo erectus lived, but also how they suffered and died. Their bones are silent witnesses to a harsh and dangerous life. Fractures, infections, and diseases were part of daily life. However, these remains also show their resilience and perhaps the first sparks of compassion. A blow taken during a hunt, a broken arm or leg from a fall, could be fatal at that time. Without modern medicine, a fracture healing incorrectly or becoming infected was a common occurrence. Many Homo erectus skeletons show healed but deformed bones. This shows that the individual managed to survive after that serious injury. However, they couldn't survive alone. A hunter with a broken leg couldn't hunt or even walk for weeks or months. For them to survive during this time means that group members brought them food, protected them, and cared for them. This is concrete evidence of empathy and mutual aid. One of the most poignant examples of this is an elderly Homo erectus skull found in Dmanisi, Georgia. This individual had lost all their teeth years before death. Without teeth, it was impossible to chew hard and fibrous foods. However, analysis of the bones shows they lived several more years after losing their teeth. This could only be possible if other members of the group fed them by pre-chewing food or finding soft foods. This is a powerful sign that a weak and dependent member was not abandoned, but valued. Diseases were also another major threat. Infections, parasites, and nutritional deficiencies were widespread. For example, traces of anemia caused by vitamin B deficiency are seen in some skeletons. This shows that their diet was not always balanced, or that they suffered scarcity in some periods. Average life expectancy was quite short by modern standards. Most Homo erectus probably didn't see their 30s or 40s. Childhood was an especially dangerous period, and infant mortality rates were probably very high. However, despite these short and harsh lives, they were resilient. Their bodies had an incredible healing capacity. Their spirits, with the support of the group, were strong enough to overcome even the toughest moments. Their fragile bodies were a reflection of the merciless world of the Pleistocene. However, these bodies' survival stories show how deeply rooted one of humanity's most fundamental virtues is: the instinct to care for one another and support each other in difficult times. Homo erectus was not the only human species walking the planet. Throughout their long existence, they may have shared the landscape with other hominins from different branches of the evolutionary tree. These encounters, if they occurred, were probably rare and local. However, they are important for understanding the diversity and complexity of this early period of human history. In the early period when Homo erectus emerged, more robust Australopithecines like Paranthropus boisei were still living in Africa. These hominins, with their massive molars and powerful jaws, were specialized for grinding hard plant material. Homo erectus, on the other hand, occupied a different ecological niche with a more generalist diet and more advanced tools. When members of these two different lineages encountered each other, what happened? Did they compete? Did they ignore each other? The fossil record is silent on this matter. However, eventually Paranthropus became extinct. Homo erectus, on the other hand, continued on its way. This may be an indication that Homo erectus's more flexible and adaptive strategy was more successful in the long term. In later periods, different populations of Homo erectus in different geographies formed a foundation for the evolution of new human species. In Europe, Homo erectus, or a close relative, Homo heidelbergensis, became the ancestor of the Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis. In Asia, the ancestors of the mysterious Denisovans may also have come from these ancient populations. This means that Homo erectus not only survived for a long time, but was also the ancestor of later human species. One of the most interesting questions is whether Homo erectus encountered our species, Homo sapiens, in its final period. Some of the latest Homo erectus remains are found on the island of Java in Indonesia and are dated to approximately 100,000 years ago. This is quite close to the period when modern humans left Africa and reached Southeast Asia. Imagining these two species encountering each other in Java's forests is a fascinating thought. One with a 2-million-year history, an old and resilient species. The other, a new and dynamic species about to conquer the planet. How did this encounter end? Was it peaceful or competitive? Did they learn anything from each other? Was there genetic exchange? Current evidence shows that the modern human genome contains Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA, but there is no evidence of direct genetic inheritance from Homo erectus. This suggests that even if they encountered each other, they did not mate fruitfully. The world of Homo erectus was not the empty and lonely world we often imagine. It was a rich and diverse world where different human forms and different survival strategies were tested. Homo erectus was the longest-running player in this world. However, it was not alone on stage. When we examine the legacy Homo erectus left behind, we see impressive technology and geographical spread. However, there is a striking absence. Concrete evidence of symbolic thought and art. No paintings on cave walls. No patterns carved into bones. No personal ornaments or ritualistic burials. This great void offers important clues about how different their mental world may have been from ours. Art and symbolism are not just an aesthetic pursuit. They are a reflection of the ability for abstract thinking. Drawing a bison on a wall means creating a mental representation of that bison and expressing it independently from the real world. Piercing a seashell to make a necklace means attributing aesthetic or social meaning to that object. These behaviors require a mind that can say, "This represents that." The almost complete absence of such evidence in the world of Homo erectus suggests that their minds were more concrete, practical, and focused on the here and now. Their intelligence was aimed at solving survival problems. How is a tool made? How is prey caught? How is a shelter found? Abstract concepts, myths, gods, or afterlife beliefs were probably not part of their thought world. Of course, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Artworks made on organic materials like wood or leather may have decayed over time. Perhaps they had dances, songs, or stories. However, these don't fossilize. Nevertheless, the absence of such traces even on durable materials like stone and bone is significant. There are a few exceptional and controversial findings on this matter. For example, a zigzag pattern carved on a freshwater clamshell found in Java, approximately 500,000 years old, has been found. This may be the oldest abstract mark made by Homo erectus. However, this is a single example, and what it means or whether it was an intentional symbol is unclear. Similarly, whether they buried their dead is another topic of debate. There is no evidence of carefully dug graves accompanied by specific rituals. The dead were probably simply abandoned or left to the mercy of natural processes. This shows that death and the beyond were not conceptualized as we do. The absence of symbols in art doesn't make Homo erectus less intelligent or less human. It just shows that they were on a different cognitive path. Their success was based not on artistic creativity or complex mythologies, but on practical intelligence, technological skill, and social cooperation. The symbolic revolution, when the world began to be represented through abstract symbols, was the next major step that would occur with the emergence of later human species, especially Homo sapiens. Every beginning has an end. Even Homo erectus, the planet's master for approximately 2 million years, was not an exception to this rule. Their extinction did not result from a sudden, single event. This was a slow and gradual process occurring at different times in different regions over hundreds of thousands of years. The causes that brought the end of this long story were probably complex and interconnected. Climate change continued to be an important factor. Toward the end of the Pleistocene, glacial cycles became more severe and irregular. These rapid and unpredictable fluctuations in climate may have upended the ecosystems to which Homo erectus was accustomed and adapted. Forests rapidly turned into steppes. Prey animals either disappeared or migrated. Homo erectus had overcome many climate changes in the past. However, these changes may have exceeded their adaptive capacity. Another important factor was competition. In the late period of Homo erectus, new and more advanced human species had entered the stage. In Europe and Western Asia, Neanderthals, and in Africa, our species, Homo sapiens, had evolved. These new species had larger brains, more sophisticated tool technologies, for example, throwable spears, and probably a more complex language and social organization. Homo sapiens and Neanderthals could exploit their environments more effectively than Homo erectus. When they began competing for the same resources, Homo erectus may have gradually become disadvantaged. This competition need not have been in the form of direct warfare or genocide. Rather, it may have occurred through the newcomers using resources more efficiently, reproducing faster, and slowly narrowing the living space of the old species. Homo erectus's last refuge appears to be the isolated islands of Southeast Asia. Fossils found in Ngandong on the island of Java in Indonesia show that this species sustained its existence until approximately 117,000 to 108,000 years ago. This makes them the latest Homo erectus population on the planet. Perhaps in these isolated islands, they could be protected a while longer from the competition of new human species. However, eventually, either changing environmental conditions or the pressure of Homo sapiens, who eventually reached these islands too, brought their end. The extinction of Homo erectus is not a story of failure. On the contrary, their story is a tale of incredible resilience and success. No human species has managed to survive as long as they did. They withdrew from the stage by giving their place to their descendants with newer and different adaptations within evolution's slow and inevitable flow. But their legacy continues to live on, if not in our DNA, in the first steps that laid the foundation for humanity's journey to becoming a global species. Homo erectus disappeared silently. They left behind neither inscriptions nor cities. So then, what is the legacy of this incredibly long-lived species? Their legacy lies not in tangible works, but in fundamental achievements that forever changed the course of humanity. They literally paved the way that enabled us to get to where we are today. Their most fundamental legacy is geographical. They were the first pioneers to leave Africa. They transformed humanity from a local African species into a global phenomenon. Every new continent, every new valley they set foot on left a world discovered and, in a sense, domesticated for Homo sapiens who would come after them. Without them, humanity's spread across the planet could have been very different, and perhaps much later. Their technological legacy is equally important. The Acheulean hand axe was not just a tool, but a concept. It required mental abilities such as planning, standardization, and knowledge transmission. This technological tradition constituted humanity's basic survival tool for more than 1 million years and laid the cognitive foundation for the development of later complex technologies. Biologically, Homo erectus formed the foundation of the modern human body plan. Long legs, short arms, upright posture, and long-distance running ability. These features evolved with them and were inherited by our species. The significant increase in brain size also began in their lineage. Their transition to a high-quality diet and use of fire initiated the energy revolution that made the brain's evolution possible as an expensive organ. Our large brains rise on their shoulders. Their social legacy is perhaps the deepest. Cooperative hunting, food sharing, and a lifestyle organized around a base camp. These are the foundations of human sociality. Behaviors such as caring for each other within the group and supporting weak and elderly members may have begun to become prominent with them. These were the first seeds of the complex social networks and moral instincts that make humans human. The story of Homo erectus teaches us an important lesson about evolution and survival. Success doesn't always mean being the most complex, fastest, or most advanced. Sometimes success means staying faithful to a solution that is good enough, slowly adapting to changing conditions, and above all, being resilient. They accomplished this for 2 million years. Today, in this age of technology, we see ourselves as masters of the planet. However, the silhouette of Homo erectus looking at us from the depths of time offers a humble reminder. Long before us, another human species walked on this planet and survived for a duration we cannot even imagine yet. Their legacy is with us in every step we take, in every tool we use, and in every moment we gather around the fire. And so a long story ends. The 2 million year march of Homo erectus fades into the silence of time. They left behind no great monuments. However, their legacy is carved into stone, bone, and the path humanity has traveled. They stood upright. They made tools. They domesticated fire and took the first steps toward the unknown. They resisted unflinchingly against changing worlds, ice ages, and wild predators. Their success was not the result of a quick victory, but of patient perseverance. Their silent resilience continues to echo beyond time as the deepest evidence of how resilient the human lineage can be.